Welcome to Executive Class. This week we're back on the road again as we travel overseas once more in search of the world's most desired and best made products. In this episode, we return to Geneva to see why this lakeside city is also known as the cradle of the Swiss watchmaking industry. Then we'll drive up the twisty country lanes of the Jura mountains to the workshop of Jaeger-LeCoultre, where some of the world's rarest and most complicated watches are still assembled and decorated by hand. And finally, we stop by Singapore to listen to what is currently the best and most expensive set of headphones ever produced. So join us, I'm David Celdran. This is Executive Class. First stop, Geneva, Switzerland, home to the United Nations Security Council, the International Red Cross, the world-famous Geneva Lake, and as any serious watch enthusiast would know, the de facto capital of the Swiss watchmaking industry. The international city also hosts some of the world's most luxurious hotels. Established in 1875, Le Richemont belongs to the exclusive Dorchester collection of iconic properties, and for the next 24 hours, the historic hotel is my home in the city. This is one of the presidential suites of the hotel, and it's on the top floor, so you can just imagine what the view of Geneva looks like from here. It's the perfect view and a perfect day to enjoy it. Winters in Geneva are often gray and misty, but on a sunny afternoon such as this, the famous Geneva skyline, the lake, known here as Le Lac, and the Alps beyond are all clearly visible from my terrace. But it's not what I'm here for. We're in Geneva to trace the roots of the country's watchmaking tradition, the world's finest and most lucrative by far. The Swiss export more than 20 million watches a year, and many of the country's most recognizable brands are headquartered here. Geneva is a city that's caught up in time. Literally, time is everywhere. From ancient dials to the ubiquitous clock tower, the reference to time is inescapable. The Swiss are obsessively punctual, and their cities run like clockwork. The trams and trains always run on schedule, and the shops open and close on the dot. Even coffee breaks are perfectly timed. It's a quality that's inherently Swiss, an impulse that comes so naturally they hardly even notice. Many believe this uniquely Swiss quality to be the wellspring of the city's watch industry, but not exactly. In fact, it was more like an accident of history. Geneva wasn't always the watchmaking capital that it is today. It was only when Protestants fleeing Catholic persecution in France settled here across the Alps that watchmaking really began to take root. This wall behind me tells that story. The monument to the Reformation on the grounds of the University of Geneva documents the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. The wall was built to commemorate the 400th year of John Calvin's birth, the reformer whose aversion to luxury inadvertently jump-started Geneva's watchmaking industry. As many of the Protestants fleeing France were jewelers and goldsmiths, their craft was at odds with Puritan Calvinism. Watchmaking, a practical skill at the time, was the alternative, and it flourished and spread throughout Protestant Switzerland. As the industry boomed, Geneva became its base, with production spreading to the villages of the nearby Jura mountains. We're leaving Geneva to visit one of those villages where watchmaking took root in the Vallée de Joux. The long, winding road to the valley cuts through the high Jura mountains. In winter, the trip lasts under 2 hours by car, but a fraction of what it took a horse-drawn carriage to reach these areas in the 17th century, when watch companies first began setting up shop here. This is the Vallée de Joux in March. It's currently 5 below zero right now. It's freezing, but it even gets colder than this during the height of winter. Apparently, these were the harsh conditions that made watchmaking possible here. Isolated and barren in winter, farmers turned to craftsmaking to make a living. Toys and miniature decor at first, and eventually, watch components. Households, entire villages specialized in one piece or another until an entire watch industry was born. By the time Antoine Lecoultre founded his workshop in Le Sentier in the early part of the 19th century, the area was already the home of some of Switzerland's best watchmakers. This is the manufacture of Jaeger-LeCoultre. Established in 1833, it is currently the largest manufacturer in the valley. We're here to see how their watches are made. The Maison of Jaeger-LeCoultre, or JLC, is called a manufacture, an industry term where all parts of a watch's mechanism are made and assembled under a single roof. Everything from microscopic screws to complicated tourbillons to decorative flourishes is done here. JLC was one of the first true manufacturers in the world and has remained that way ever since. This complete control over production, plus its unique location in Le Sentier, are what helped keep JLC on the cutting edge of the industry. Why was Le Sentier itself and the valley ideal for watchmaking? Why do you think JLC never left this place to begin with?
We never left the place because that's in the Vallée de Joux. That's where you find the best watchmakers for traditional high complication in the world. So there's no other place today where with such a tremendous know-how, and many other brands, even if they're based in different places like Geneva, they have their own workshop in the Vallée de Joux as soon as it gets complicated. A good watchmaker of the Vallée de Joux, you cannot export it. As soon as you put him in another place, he will lose a little bit his passion, he will lose his confidence, he will lose actually what makes him a good watchmaker. And what's important is you are now in the Vallée de Joux, so you can tell that it's a different world. And people in the Vallée de Joux, they have to focus, they have to think, they have to dedicate their work to what they do. It's a very challenging work, and that requires a lot of concentration. And when they leave the company, the manufacturer, they are free. There's no traffic, no lights, no advertising. They just enjoy the tranquility, the quietness of the Vallée de Joux.
Considering how isolated the valley is, where does the inspiration come from for design, for innovations? That can't just be something local, is it?
If you master what you do, if you know the history of watchmaking, if you do it yourself, then you'll always see what can be improved, because you know the way it's done. You see that you've reached some limits. You see that there are things that are maybe not perfect yet. So by doing yourself, you always detect what can be improved. So that's the strength of doing everything yourself.
That's probably the reason why JLC timepieces have designs and movements that feel purpose-driven and so naturally complete. But integration like this isn't easy or cheap. It means doing it in-house pretty much from A to Z. To give you an example of the level of detail, this workshop is dedicated entirely to pallet lever assembly. JLC is one of the few left that make their own, and the ladies here, yes, women, are preferred for their dexterity, painstakingly attach the rubies that form the points of contact with the escapement wheel. It's that part that makes the watch go tick-tock. Some of these parts are almost invisible to the naked eye, and yet here they are in this workshop, putting them together with their bare hands. Modern tool machines and computer technology have made life easier for watchmakers. So imagine what challenges their forebears faced in the 19th century. Yes, it was all made by hand with a few crude machines back then. But hand craftsmanship remains an essential part of JLC's practice and philosophy.
Our philosophy is to say it has to be handcrafted in order to be beautifully decorated, to be perfect, to be assembled in a way that it works the best, to be sure that everything is performed in a way that you master what you do. So you are in charge of what you do. It's not a machine.
High-tech is employed in the early design and production stages, but about 80% of the rest of the work is by hand. It's not a romantic notion for JLC, it's just that certain aspects of watchmaking, especially finishing and decorating, including parts that won't be seen anyway, are best left in the hands of highly skilled and creative human beings. There are two faces of Jaeger-LeCoultre. One is the watchmaking wizard, and the other the craftsman and artist. In this workshop is where the artistry takes place. No machine could do it better, and neither could the average person. This level of watchmaking is only found at the top end of the industry, and JLC is among the handful capable of doing it in-house. The fine art of enameling is the apex of watchmaking. This highly sensitive procedure is reserved for the elite. Impressed? Well, you ain't seen the best of it yet. When our tour of the Jaeger-LeCoultre manufacture in Le Sentier continues, we'll find out what almost 2 centuries of watchmaking expertise in the valley can achieve. Rare, grand complications and cult timepieces from Jaeger-LeCoultre's recent collection revealed and dissected when executive class returns.